Kids in Jacksonville, Florida back to school today. NBC News reporter Priscilla Thompson spoke to parents and students about being in the classroom during a pandemic.
My daughter, special needs adult, and she works here at the school in the cafeteria. And yes, I'm nervous, very nervous. I'm concerned about the children, the teachers, the workers. That if something goes wrong and they get sick, I have problems, diabetes, and I have high blood pressure. I think this, going back to school, is very important, but I think they're rushing it. I really do. I think they're rushing it. I think we should just step back, breathe, take a time out, rethink this thing.
I'm feeling very good about it. Duval County's gone above and beyond to make sure that the classes are and the schools are safe and healthy for all of our children, so there's no problem with it.
Excited. Yeah, excited, a little nervous, but definitely excited. Yeah. Are you excited, Evan?
A little nervous and a little excited. I don't know if I like my teacher yet.
Okay.
I only meet her like one time.
I don't know. I mean, I think the school is doing a pretty good job, our school anyway, at making sure the kids are going to be safe. So they've stayed in contact with us through emails and texts, to let us know what they're doing to make sure everything is, they're following the guidelines and all that. So I feel pretty comfortable with that.
Priscilla joins me now. Priscilla, what are the safety rules, the safety regulations in Jacksonville schools right now?
Sure, Allison. Well, as you heard there, many of those preparations actually began before the first day of school started here today. And that began whenever parents were given a choice about whether they wanted to send their students back for in-person learning or opt for a virtual option. And many of the parents who did choose this in-person learning option did so because of the safety measures that the school has put in place. And that includes things like temperature checks, face shields and desk barriers, and also an antimicrobial treatment that is going to be used to disinfect the school in hopes of keeping it clean. And that is in addition to some new measures that the district actually just announced yesterday, including hiring more nurses, making sure that PPP remains stocked up, and also drive-through rapid testing at high schools is going to be another key piece of this. But as a reminder, these were some of the safety measures that went in place whenever businesses here reopened. We heard a lot about things like masks and temperature checks, and we still saw cases spike and begin to rise despite that. So it remains to be seen what exactly will happen as these school reopenings continue.
Yeah, Priscilla, let's talk more about the plans if a student gets sick, if they run into outbreaks at the school. How does that all work?
Well, here in Duval County, the expectation is that if a student is sick and has to quarantine, if they're feeling well enough, the county is hoping that they'll opt for that virtual option while they're in quarantine in order to keep up with their schoolwork and prevent them from racking up absences. But one of the key questions here is how exactly this information is going to be disseminated and reported. Duval County has said that they are not going to be making general announcements about folks that have tested positive or been infected unless it interrupts sort of the daily school routine and what's going on campus. But the state, for its part, has said that it hasn't quite figured out if or how it's going to be reporting those school outbreaks. They're saying instead that those numbers are going to be folded into the statewide numbers. And so it'll be interesting to see what the level of transparency looks like whenever we do see cases pop up in these different schools, Allison.
Priscilla, you mentioned this is not the first school district to reopen in Florida. We have seen some coronavirus cases in other schools. How have those other reopenings gone, so to speak?
Well, Allison, to your point, this is the largest district to reopen, serving around 130,000 students, but it is not the first. Around a dozen districts across the state have reopened, and we've already seen at least 3 of those districts reporting a positive case in their district. And the way that is being handled, we actually just learned that another district is reporting another case today, and what they're doing is having the entire kindergarten class actually quarantine, and they have the county doing the contact tracing to determine anyone outside of that classroom that may have had contact with those students and notifying those parents directly about that contact so that those folks can quarantine as well. But this comes as the state of Florida has ordered that all school districts, except for the largest 3, must reopen for in-person learning in some capacity by the end of the month. And there is an ongoing lawsuit right now filed by the Florida Education Association over the fact that those districts could lose funding if they choose not to return to some form of in-person learning. And we do expect some sort of judgment to be coming on that next week to determine how these schools are going to have to proceed. But at this point, all of them are expected to reopen for some form of in-person learning by the end of the month, Allison.
Priscilla, so many challenges for school districts trying to educate kids this year. Thank you for getting us up to speed on what's happening there in Florida.
Thanks, Allison.
New guidance from the Trump administration defines teachers as critical infrastructure workers. That means they could be exempt from quarantine and sent back to the classroom after being exposed to COVID-19. Joining me now, Dr. Bob Lahita, chairman of the Department of Medicine at St. Joseph's Healthcare System in New Jersey. Dr. Lahita, in light of that new guidance and as schools across the country are reopening, what should teachers be doing to stay safe?
Well, teachers should be keeping their distance from the students. The students should be, if they're old enough to wear masks and keep the masks on, they should keep the mask on. And there should be elimination of field trips. They should screen students where they can. And it's very difficult to screen little children for the infection. And I'm going to talk about the fact that symptoms in little children are virtually non-existent, except for a flu-like illness, perhaps. But, you know, little kids don't get lung diseases like the adults do from coronavirus. So they'll have fever, a flu-like illness, probably more abdominal discomfort, maybe some vomiting. But the amazing thing that's coming forth right now is these children can be asymptomatic and carry the virus, and they can infect each other. Now, if the teacher is careful, she'll prevent herself from being infected by a child who, say, is carrying the infection. The Boston study that is now in pre-publication form is suggesting that children below the age of 5 can carry the infection without symptoms at all and carry large amounts of virus. And that's somewhat disconcerting to everybody. But if distancing is kept, social distancing is kept, and people wear their masks, particularly teachers who might also want to wear a face shield, and the classrooms are disinfected, and field trips are canceled, and there's no grouping together in the cafeteria or other parts of the school of the children, then we should be okay with reopening the schools. Allison, the big concern is the child who goes home who is not symptomatic and exposes his or her parents to or grandparents to the infection.
So given that, Dr. Lahita, that concern, also the study that you referenced out of Mass General about potentially children being silent spreaders of COVID-19. What should parents be doing here? What do you say to parents who say, I am just worried I'm sending my kid to school and that they could bring something home and we won't even know it?
Yeah, that's a major issue. And, you know, the important thing is that the child could come home, and I would advise parents to keep a thermometer available to take their child's temperature, especially if he has the sniffles or he's sneezing and coughing. And then if the child appears to be sick, to keep him or her home and quarantine the whole family for a period of time if you are suspecting that the child is carrying the virus. And then the pediatrician needs to be called so the child can be tested.
A lot of temperature taking this fall for sure, Dr. Lahita. I'd love to ask you a question about travel as well. I know people are concerned about what's safe, what isn't safe. Delta Airlines announcing that it is limiting the number of people on its flights at least until January. How safe would you say it is to fly right now? And if someone needs to fly, what should they be doing?
Well, certainly they have eliminated, from what I'm hearing, the middle seats. And the flyer should wear a mask and sanitize his or her hands with hand sanitizer, and make sure you wash your hands frequently. If it's a long flight, just stay in your seat with your mask on and don't interact with any of the other passengers. We've heard early on of a passenger getting, he thinks, infected through his eyes. So if you feel that that's a concern, you can wear glasses or goggles to protect your eyes. But I'm told by the airlines that they have Teflon filtration systems on the planes, which are fairly good for filtering out particulate matter, and some of them claim viruses as well. But I would keep my distance from other passengers when I'm on the flight. And some of the airlines may actually take temperatures with one of those electronic face temperature measurers. So that I think it's okay to fly, though. I've had many patients flying all over in this country, not abroad. And of course, we're suggesting that people avoid areas where there are spikes, such as Southern California, various parts of Texas, and certainly, of course, Florida.
Dr. Lahita, thank you so much for the advice for teachers, for parents, for travelers. I know they all have a lot of questions. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Allison.
Jobless claims shot back over 1 million this week after dropping 2 weeks in a row. NBC News senior business correspondent Stephanie Ruhle takes us through the numbers.
Allison, we do not have good news today on the jobs front. The weekly unemployment numbers are out, and we are back up over 1 million people. That's over 1 million Americans in the last week filing for unemployment. That's after 2 weeks of declines, and members of the administration saying we are getting back in business when it comes to jobs. The president continuing to stress that we haven't just had a V-shaped recovery, it's been a super V. Well, now that we have a total of over 30 million Americans out of work, that tells us we are seeing more permanent layoffs. And don't forget, the expanded unemployment benefits, that extra $600, that ran out over 2 weeks ago. Why does that matter so much? That money goes into the economy. And more economists are warning we could see increase of homelessness. We could see increase in food insecurity. Some say we could begin to rival a scenario similar to what we saw during the Great Depression. This is a major issue that so many people need to focus on, especially because we've got the election ahead of us. Tonight, Joe Biden is going to be taking the stage, the last night of the Democratic National Convention, no doubt talking about the economy and jobs, while the president continues to liken the stock market to the economy, which, as you know, is roaring. All this tells a tale of two economic Americas. Allison?
Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here, and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.